Let me just plug in and say that I love that thing about Kellogg. I think if I had to get a tattoo in life, I would have gotten something which says that you're braver than you know, because I feel that particular emotion really gets you to do things that you might not think that you can achieve. How does one face minus 10 degrees Celsius, right? But have no fear at all. What I have learned after coming here is that it's not bad weather, you have bad clothes. So Chicago has very cold winters, but this year, possibly due to global warming, it did not seem to be that cold. And I do believe that it is good to also develop the ability of context switching. I think I've learned context switching here much more than I have in any other environment in my life. So the ability to be able to switch out of a class to a fun session, back to a group assignment, and give everything your best is also going to be useful for the rest of your life.
Welcome to another episode of Crack the MBA show. Our guest today is Shivani Taskar, who recently completed her first year at Kellogg School of Management. Shivani completed her bachelor's degree in pharmacy from BITS Pilani, where she helped end night curfews for women. Thereafter, she worked with Deutsche Bank, working on an entrepreneurial initiative with the CEO's office and with Urban Company, pioneering digital transformation by introducing remote consultations in response to COVID-related lockdowns. At Kellogg, Shivani has served as Director of Content Gender Equity Network, Director of Alumni Engagement at Kellogg Student Association, and Section Leader for Day at Kellogg. Shivani is actively involved with Kellogg Entrepreneurship and VC Club, Kellogg Cares, and the Games Club. In her second year, Shivani will be co-president of the General Management Club and leading KSA's new Alumni Engagement division. She will also be speaker chair at Kellogg's first ever India Business Conference in spring 2024. This summer, Shivani is scheduled to intern with Baird, and once she returns to Kellogg, she will pursue an in-semester internship at F7 Ventures, which will be her first foray into the world of VC. Welcome, Shivani, and it looks like you're planning to complete the activity quota for all your classmates.
Thank you so much for having me, Nupur. And yes, if I can say something about my first year, I've been very intentional about doing everything possible. We'll see how that goes in the future for the second year.
Definitely want to learn more about that, how you've even managed to find the time to do so many things. But before that, why don't you tell our audience a fun fact about yourself?
Absolutely. So this is something that I love to tell everyone. Back in 2007, I had been to South Africa, and for the first time I'd been for an African safari. Was very excited and got the chance to see 6 healthy newborn cubs. While I thought that they would be very much wanting me to pet them and have me rub over their bellies, what they decided to do was use me as a chew toy. So I am the survivor of cub bite. I literally could not move my arm for the next 1 month and realize the strength of these cats.
Holy moly. Didn't even come up while we were working together. And I guess you and injuries have a way of finding each other, right?
Yes, very much.
Yeah, that's quite the story, I must say. Amazing. All right. So before we get into the admissions questions, Shivani, I would love to chat about influences, right? Can you share some of your winning habits that have led to all your successes, like getting through BITS Pilani, getting through at Kellogg, and securing multiple internship offers? It's not everybody who gets to do such cool things.
I do think that generally I've been brought up in an environment where I've been expected to give my best, regardless of the situation that unfolds thereafter. So I do think that persistence and resilience with regard to whatever the situation unfolds into next, 2 of the key traits that I would put into it. And I've seen this in action amongst different people as well, that it is often people who put in as many efforts as they can, come up with the best outcome, rather than somebody who may have the talent but may not put in as much intentionality into the work that they're doing.
What could be an example of that when you've been persistent and resilient?
I think the biggest example for me in my life is when I started off my career in finance. Loved it for the first few months. So this was in the sales and trading division. However, over the next few months, I realized that I wanted to have an overview of how P&L works in a company, and that would involve subjective things, that would involve operations, that would involve different aspects of people in general and how they are expected to do their tasks, etc. And I realized finance would not give me that much of a perspective into this. And then came an entire year of speaking to different people, understanding what their roles are, applying to varied amount of roles in startups, in bigger firms, doing projects that showcase that although I have a very strong numerical background through finance, I could also have the strategic mindset required to do everything else required in a startup. And I'm happy to say that I got a really cool role at Urban Company after that particular year, which just brought the dedication put into that entire year into fruition.
Superb. That is so incredible. All right, Shivani, we'll move right into admissions. As an alum of Crack the MBA, can you share your experience working with CTM?
Absolutely. I do think that the entire MBA process requires a thought partner for everybody who is considering it. And for me, you, Nupur, was the best thought partner. What I liked the best about you, as I've told you multiple times, is that you always guided me, but never forced my thoughts or my ways of writing out stuff that I wanted to present about myself. You knew how to ensure that I present the best version of myself. That was the best part of me. And overall, coming to the entire process, first of all, I was the recipient of the Daya Kindness Fellowship, which I'm very, very grateful for. Nupur chose to award this fellowship to girls who want to pursue a management career. And after that, we went into the entire process of understanding my profile, understanding what is it that I want to do in the future, and then aligning my story to present it to all of the business schools that I was interested in applying to. And this resulted in having multiple iterations of essays, but the final essay is something that I'm very proud of. That's definitely a plus. And then, Nupur, I really appreciate how much effort you put into each of the interview preparations that we did, into understanding how my recommenders would want to write about me, what the characteristics that they could pinpoint in their version of contact with the school, and then finally understanding how could I even convert some of the waitlists that I had. So overall, I really, really cannot recommend everybody watching this particular show, to work with Nupur.
Thank you so much for that, Shivani. All right. And moving to the other admissions questions, right? How long did you spend on each component of the application? If you could break it down, like the test, resume, essays, networking, application forms, and maybe also the interviews.
Absolutely. So I had given my GMAT in my fourth year of college, which for me turned out to be a good decision because the entire application process is a marathon, and it's always good if you have to run a little bit less. So I had finished off with my GMAT right then. I had studied very much on my own, and I would probably recommend that approach. You have a lot of books from the GMAT providers, which you can utilize, and it's pretty much high school math as well as verbal. Having said that, the other part of the process, which is the entire application consisting of writing the essays, the resume, and the application questions, did take a year for me, considering I applied in both rounds for different schools. The resume, I do believe, ought to be of utmost importance, just because it is a summary of all of your achievements, all of the organizations that you've been a part of, and ultimately the first document that I suppose the admissions people would read. After that, the essays naturally take some time to develop, which took me about, I think, 3 months for a master essay to come about, or 2 or 3 master essays to actually be written, which could be inculcated into the essays of different schools. I would recommend spending at least 1 or 2 weeks on the admissions questions in the applications of each of the schools, just because you can put in a lot of information that you haven't been able to incorporate into your essays into these questions, so that different parts of your personality also stand out throughout the application and not just in a particular paragraph in that essay. So overall, it is very much a marathon. It requires patience, it requires persistence, but ultimately the outcome is something that you will be very proud of yourself for.
Okay, super. And what about the interview as well? How long do you recommend spending on it?
I would say you should definitely be speaking to people again. I would recommend doing that for the interview. By people, I mean students of that college. So about a week of continuous effort would be a good time spent for the interview.
Understood. And networking, I assume, would be ongoing through the process, like speaking to students and alumni.
Absolutely. So I spoke to students of each school twice. As I would recommend, one is while writing the essays, and that's when you're just understanding the school. And the second time was when I was interviewing. There are also a lot of resources online to read about each school. And why I would recommend doing that first is because you get into like a second tier of questions when you're talking to students, as opposed to just asking them, hey, what are your opinions about Kellogg in general? So you can always ask deeper questions, and the students are happier to answer them, and thus you get better insights while writing out your application or saying that aloud in your interviews as well. So definitely do your own research first before speaking to anybody.
Okay.
I did attend a lot of webinars by the different schools as well. And one thing that if I could have redone is probably taken notes during them, because generally you do listen to all of the things, but then the nuances really come out when I think you take a few good notes, and that's when you can utilize whatever they're saying about their own schools into your particular application material.
Right. And as you're attending more events, it all becomes a blur, right? So having
Exactly,
notes helps.
exactly.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, interesting point about the resume being something really important, right? Can you share some advice on how people can go about doing their resume?
I do think that resumes, in my opinion, and Nupur would definitely be able to, I think, guide you better, but there is a different type of resume for a B school versus that or for a corporate resume. So if I were applying for a finance position, I would have put more finance related terms into my resume. But for a B school, you want to be able to highlight how you know how your work is being utilized in a business sense. So the difference in that would be that, for example, for Deutsche Bank, I would have written price trades or calculated volatilities of XYZ things, because that is very technical work. But here, for a B school, for example, I would change that to something that calculated risk for the investment banking division of Deutsche Bank, which helped in reducing capital requirement. You always have to project, in my opinion, what your work is contributing to at a macro level and how it is moving things related to the world of business. It's also important to do that because I suppose that admissions officers would be reading varied resumes, and it's really important for them to be able to understand what you're trying to convey in a very easy manner rather than making them work for it. And anyway, just saying that you're calculating betas and gamma velocities is really not going to project that you want to be a part of an MBA and actually learn about how businesses function. So I think it's important to showcase that you are a mature person who can convey your particular work in a very, very simple and concise manner.
Okay, that's super helpful. Thanks. Shivani, Kellogg is known for producing brave leaders, and there's also an essay on that. So, how did you approach your brave leader essay? Talk to us about the theme and how you approached it.
Absolutely. Let me just plug in and say that I love that thing about Kellogg. I think if I had to get a tattoo in life, I would have gotten something which says that you're braver than you know, because I feel that particular emotion really gets you to do things that you might not think that you can achieve. So definitely an emotion that I completely vibe with. As far as your question goes, yes, Kellogg does have that as one of its main values. And the first essay is very much asking how you embody that. The way I approached it is by first breaking down the components of the question itself. So they asked for a recent example of how I showcased that particular value, which brought me to my role then, which was an urban company, and a project that I was working on at that particular point of time. I would consider it to be the project that I really liked as well, which meshed in a very nice way. I wanted to talk about it in my application, and this was the best chance that I got to actually talk about it in detail. I think in this particular essay, what they mean by brave leadership is the things that you have proactively brought into that project because of particular circumstances. So the challenges that you face, the thinking that you showcase after that, and the extra effort that you put in order to achieve the particular result. So for me, particularly, I wrote out what the situation was, how important it was for the company to be able to solve that, what was my thought process into solving it, who were the people that I had to convey this information to and convince in order to work it out in the way that my team thought best. What were the challenges that we encountered after that? And then what was my innovative thinking that helped push the solution forward? I also ended it with showcasing how I would be continuing to do so at Kellogg, what I have learned about Kellogg from previous students, and how this particular value is completely in line with the way I've functioned thus far.
Wow, that sounds amazing, even as you were talking about it. So, Shivani, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but what gives the Brave Leader essay its wow factor?
I actually do tell this to everybody who asks me about it is the wow factor comes from, I believe, your simplicity in conveying the challenges and how you manage to do it. I think people shouldn't stress so much about, oh my goodness, is it actually showcasing that I'm very brave and I put in a lot of effort? I do think that if you are competent and doing well at your job, there are a lot of instances on a day-to-day basis that you put in innovative thinking to, you're a problem solver, and you bring about good solutions. So just being able to showcase your problem solving and your initiative into your work, which I believe that all of us put in on a day-to-day basis at work, is something that would help for this essay. So I think while starting to write this essay, be very calm and just write out in very simple terms what you believe you've done for that project. The wow factor will come in when you have showcased the fact that the instances required out of box thinking and you were the one who actually put in that dedication to be able to bring about the result. So the get it done for me was, I believe, its wow factor. It could be different for different people.
Fair enough. And in your case with Urban Company, if you could just like in one line, maybe even mention what the situation was so that our audience has a better sense for what kind of things people talk about.
Absolutely. So I joined Urban Company at a time when demand was at a low for its different categories because of the COVID pandemic. And so what we realized is we want to inculcate trust into the customers, that as a company, we are experts in the services that we offer and that we can have hygienic services provided to you safely at home. And in order to get this trust instilled, we thought of a video consultation service. And then I wrote about the entire journey of establishing this video consultation service with blue collar technicians. So I had to, as the category manager of this particular project, I had to set up both the demand side, which is training our technicians, helping them to speak to customers, working with the product team to actually get the service on our app, and also then working with the marketing team to build that particular funnel of demand. So all of the different challenges involved came into a story of how we managed to scale this particular category in Pan India.
Wow, that sounds like a fantastic experience. Superb. Thanks for sharing that, Shivani. And Kellogg also has an essay on values, right? So, can you share what are the core Kellogg values? You did talk about brave leadership being one of them. So, what are the other core values?
I think every applicant to Kellogg should know the main phrase that is trademark of Kellogg, which is a low ego, high impact. But having said that, there are other core Kellogg values, those being of empathy, bravery, courageousness, a learning mindset. So all of these are values that you can pick up and showcase through your own set of beliefs.
Okay, very cool. And if you could talk a little bit about how you approach the values essay, that'd be super helpful as well. Maybe like you could mention one example. I think that'd be super helpful.
For sure. For my values essay, I cited about 3 different examples of situations and how I reacted to those, which basically showcased my values. So, one of them was when I was in high school, I worked with Adivasis in the RA forests of Bombay, and how we basically went about inculcating green practices and helping them to rebuild their economy. And that showed me the value of initiative and leadership and community service. So, although this was something that I had done in school, I wanted to show that my values are not something that are examples of me right now. They have emerged from childhood, and that was the way that I had started my story. I built on to that by showcasing how I used this proactiveness and initiative in university and actioned against the curfew that we had for women in BITS Pilani. So these need not, in my opinion, be corporate situations. These could be instances from your day-to-day life of things outside work, which bring about a more wholesome part of your personality rather than you just talking about how you function in a corporate setting.
Okay, very cool. I also love the fact that you showed your growth over a period of time, right? Starting from childhood to college, and then that's how you went about it. That's cool. And what advice do you have for candidates to identify key anecdotes, right? Because you did talk a couple times about that this could be day-to-day things, but many times I find people struggling to even identify those anecdotes. They're always worried that we haven't done anything that cool. We've seen some of our friends' essays. Oh my God, they've done all these cool things. I'm sure even people hearing some of your stories would be like, wow, I haven't done anything like that. So, how can candidates identify those anecdotes?
For sure. I do think that it requires a very intense brainstorming process. I do remember brainstorming with Unipur and coming up with some of the instances that I might not have thought of before. But overall, I do believe that it won't be as difficult if you actually take in the time to reflect, to understand how you stood out as an individual, as a team member, as somebody who went and actioned something when you did not actually have to partake in that particular, you did not have that responsibility. So really taking the time to not think about the prompt of the essays at first, but understanding how your life has evolved would be the best first step. And if it's of any help, then I do think that this is a good process to think about your life in general, regardless of the MBA applications. So I would highly recommend everybody to just go ahead and do it to understand how you have evolved as a person. For me, personally, I do think that this entire forestation initiative in the RA forest was a defining moment of my childhood, something that I had a chance to go and speak about in different school conferences. I had received the Maharashtra Homi Baba gold medal for it. So it was something that definitely defined me as a person, which was my starting point. And after that, I wrote about instances where I think that this particular initiative led me to be a part of 180 Degrees Consulting, which is the world's largest university-based consulting organization for nonprofits. Even here, I dealt with projects related to the environment in Africa. So I had a chance to go to South Africa and work with the African Parks Network to revive national parks in Malawi. So all of these, one thing led to the other, and that is how I view my life, which essentially came into the application as well.
Very cool. What I'm also noticing, Shivani, is that this penchant for participating in activities has been since your childhood. That's something I'm hearing. And just to plug, you talked earlier about the Daya Fellowship. So this was a kindness fellowship, and your work there in Africa is definitely one of the things that really, really impressed me as well.
I'm glad. But yes, I think as a person, I do believe that you ought to prioritize what you like doing the best. For me, it is being a part of different activities, and that is coming out even in Kellogg, which I think makes me happy.
Yeah, that's so cool. Amazing. And Shivani, Kellogg also has 3 video essays, which are impromptu, right? Which gives people jitters and nightmares. So, can you talk about how you prepared for this component of the process?
Absolutely. So for me, I think I did research on what the previous year's prompts were and tried to get myself into a form that would help me be calm and just answer the question. So for everybody who's asked me about this question, I've just told them that all that they're testing is how you're able to respond to that situation. So all you have to do is be calm and just say whatever you are thinking about. You've written so many essays, you've literally thought about your entire life. Now, if someone's asking you a question about a small part of your life, you should be in a good enough position or the best position to answer it in a very, very nice way. So definitely not something to be scared about. I did prepare for the tell me about yourself question just because I knew that would probably be a recurring question year over year, and I should have an answer to that. I did read through all of my application materials. Again, I knew what I had written about as my short-term goals, as my long-term goals, and these were some of the questions that were part of the video essays as well. So just being able to produce whatever you have written in that 1 minute in a very calm manner to showcase your best personality is all that they're looking for.
Okay, that's helpful. And Shivani, were there any weaknesses that you overcame through your application process? If yes, could you talk about that?
For sure. I do think that while writing my application, I was very, very scared about the financial services part, which is my role in Deutsche Bank. As a caveat, I would like to put in that after coming to Kellogg, I realized that was a very silly weakness to think of. Of course, there would be people from a technical background. Of course, there would be people who've worked in a very numbers related setting. I was always worried that I have to be able to translate all of the hard work that goes into a technical process in a simple manner for the admissions officers to understand. And that was where most of my, I think, energies went while applying or maybe even understanding if business school was the right move for me. Having said that, I do think that, as everybody says, you are a person of many parts, and thus showcasing your best parts is the most important part. Everybody has weaknesses. Even the most perfectly curated profile has weaknesses, and you should just be able to convey your thought process into each of the decisions of your life in a very, very concise and pinpointed manner, and not worry too much about each of the smaller components of it.
Understood. One more thing in admissions, the interview, right? Can you share your Kellogg interview experience and also what advice you have for applicants?
Sure. So I had researched a lot. I had spoken to you before going into the entire interview. And what I was prepared with is I have to go into the interview and introduce myself, because tell me about yourself has to be the first question. And surprisingly for me, it was not. My Kellogg interviewer went straight into my resume, asked me very pinpointed questions of, hey, why did you choose Deutsche Bank after graduation? After that, why did you choose to go into a startup? So it was a very, very resume-led interview, as I like to call it, which was a surprise. But again, I think, as one of my favorite professors here in Kellogg says, I'm surprised you're surprised. In life, his motto, and my motto is just be so well prepared and expect that, of course, if they're interviewing you, they will be asking you questions about your resume. So basically, it just turned out to be a good conversation about myself. Having said that, I would highly recommend having answers to all of the questions that are part of a typical behavioral interview. Tell me about your strengths and weaknesses. Tell me about the time that you failed. Tell me about how you have led the charge in diversity and inclusion. For Kellogg, I would say that always have a team lens to your answers, because they will not ask you, tell me about your strengths. At least they do not ask me that. They ask me if I ask your teammates in your current organization as to what your strengths are, what would they say? If they had to say that there was something that they would like you to improve at, what would they say? And so your answers cannot be that, hey, I'm very detail oriented, because that's like an individual contributor answer, in my opinion. It always needs to have a people aspect to make it a very Kellogg fit answer, again, in my opinion.
That's a very nice tip. Thanks, Shivani. One more question in this section, Shivani. What is the evaluation rubric followed by Kellogg's admissions committee, in your opinion?
I do believe that, considering Kellogg interviews almost all of its candidates, it looks specifically for a fit component. So by fit, I mean genuinely nice people are what they get. So low ego, high impact is something that I guess that they check for. And hence the very first advice that I would consider is having a balanced, humble tone to your answers would be of utmost importance. You should not come across as a person who is narcissistic, who wants to showcase that they did everything. Because ultimately, I think we all know that we work as part of teams, whether it be in our lives prior to Kellogg, in Kellogg, or thereafter. So showcasing how you work as part of a team, having, I would say, accurate or like answers rather than saying, I did the entire scaling up of this myself, which is pretty much wrong. So just having that my team and I work towards this, and this is how I contributed, would be one of the characteristics of the people that I see coming to Kellogg. So empathy, showing that you're a good team member, but also having that particular mindset of showing that you're proactive in whatever you do would be the top 3 tips that I would give for a Kellogg interview. Knowing the school would definitely be another one, but I suppose that's pretty much something that you should be doing anyway for any school.
Amazing. All right, moving to the Kellogg specific questions now, Shivani. What for you is Kellogg's unique identity? You've already talked about the values, and maybe it's the same answer, but if at all there's anything different, please let us know.
No, so my answer comes from my perception of Kellogg, and maybe different people have different answers. But the thing that I love best about Kellogg is the amount of effort that the school itself puts in to ensure that everybody is included and integrated. Is something that I haven't seen or heard across the different top MBA schools. So basically by this, what I mean is the school administration itself puts in a lot of effort to integrate people from different backgrounds, whether that be through the groups that they make within your section, the groups that they make while you are preparing for your recruitments. The women will have a women business club pod, which is a group of women, again, doing particular activities together, is something that I love the best. Not only do they make this pod at the beginning of the school year, they also have events put into your calendars in different parts of your quarter, which ensures that the group meets, you get to meet people of different backgrounds, and basically you thus have a more wholesome experience than expected. Something that I've realized about the MBA world after coming here is that it is easy to get into your own comfort zone, to have your own set of friends in like the first part of the year and stick to that particular group for the rest of the year. While some people are very intentional about breaking out of those molds and continually making new relationships over the course of the 2 years, it might not be the case. And this is something that I've observed across schools. And what Kellogg does is, by having these continual matchups of different people, it ensures that you speak to different people automatically and thus build your network and, more importantly, really good relationships and friendships.
Very cool. And Shivani, what are the flagship events through the year that generate maximum attendance and excitement? I know there's quite a few of them.
The reason why I laughed is, in an MBA school, the next event is the best event that is coming up, and everyone's very excited for that. You have that perception that, we had the white party recently, but the next party organized by the Latin Club is going to be even better. But having said that, I do think that the Kellogg or the MBA world would be divided into these events, which would be conferences organized by the different clubs. It would be the cultural events / parties that are again organized by the cultural associations. It could be some of the guest speakers that come, and I'm a huge proponent of going to each of these. For Kellogg, it's difficult. It's genuinely difficult to pick out one particular event that is a flagship event of the school year. It's literally every event that comes along that is organized that I would say must go to events.
Got it. Which are the, I guess, your favorite ones from your first year?
So for me, I think recently we had a section Olympics, which was amazing. It was different people across sections competing for the section cup. There are others such as the Diwali party, the different conferences that I think would be some of my favorites. We also had a drag showcase in our fall quarter, which for me was one of my favorite events because I performed for that, which I had not performed on a stage for in a long, long time.
Super. And you mentioned that the guest speaker series, you recommend going for all of them. So maybe what kind of speakers you've had?
Yeah, Kellogg has different types of speaker series. There is a lunch and learn series almost on a daily basis, which I try and attend almost every single day. This would involve different themes such as maybe women in healthcare, women in finance, or just like people who are in search funds, people who are entrepreneurs, current students who are pursuing entrepreneurship. So these are events that happen in classrooms during the lunch hour, and you can go and interact with the speakers. There are bigger speaker series, such as we recently had the ex-CEO and chairman of IBM come in. We had Stuart Weitzman, the shoe magnate. We had the CEO of JP Morgan come in, which bigger events, but I would even say that the frequency of those is like one per month, which is really good for the entire school to try and attend. And everyone does in large numbers.
Okay. Shivani, in what ways does the Evanston location shape the Kellogg experience? Can you speak about that? Give us a sense for what living in Evanston looks like. Where do people live? What does the F&B scene look like? Everything.
For me, coming from BITS Pilani, which is in a town a few hours away from Delhi, having university, which is slightly away from a main city, was one of the criteria of, I think, choosing a business school. What that results in is a community of the school in itself, which is not marred by people going to the city very often or by any other distractions per se. This results in most of the people staying in Evanston for the better part of the year. There are a few evening and weekend students who, of course, stay in Chicago, but by and large, the Kellogg community is a very tight-knit community with everybody staying in Evanston. This results in more small group dinners. It results in more small events, much more than what I have heard of in, say, other MBA universities across the US. Evanston, for that matter, is about 30-minute metro ride from Chicago. And what that results in is, should you need to go into the city, you can go easily. That is not a problem, but it also helps in maintaining that Kellogg bubble all in itself away from the city. I absolutely love the way everything's arranged as well, in terms of all of the apartment buildings are close to each other. So you can stay anywhere and yet be a 5-minute walk from wherever you want to go to. There are all sorts of stores very close to all of the apartment buildings. So you have a Target, you have a Whole Foods, you have about 10 different restaurants right near the apartment buildings. So the food and beverage scene is sorted as well.
Nice. Do people cook?
I cook. So, and I do that. Different friends cook as well. We also have an Indian lady who provides tiffins, which is amazing if you don't want to cook and yet want to have Indian food. So that's definitely something that I was pleasantly surprised to know once I arrived here.
I guess she had her business game on even without the Kellogg MBA.
She has definitely imbibed all of the strategy aspects of an MBA.
Super, super. And what's the global hub like, Shivani? Talk to us a little bit about the newly formed global hub. I mean, it's been a few years now, but even so.
Absolutely. I wish I could show you the global hub, which is where I am currently. It is a beautiful glass building. And I mean, the first impression is definitely that of awe. But aesthetics aside, I think that the global hub has been intentionally designed to have spaces where people congregate together, where people can sit for their assignments together, and where you can have private study spaces alone as well. So it's always a very fun vibe in the morning, especially because Kellogg classes all start and end at the same time. So when all of the classes end, people come to the dome area of the global hub and everybody gets a chance to see each other and talk to each other in that particular space. Considering that Kellogg is a school that has a curriculum very heavily based on group assignments, we have many spaces for people to sit together and brainstorm or work on an assignment together. We have our famous Spanish steps, which you can see in any photograph that you see of Kellogg, which are basically stairs where people sit and maybe just meet with each other for coffee chats or just sit alone and do their work, and yet have a view of all of the activity that is going on in the hub at large. So that is something that I love about the campus.
Yeah, it's stunning. I remember visiting in 2018 and thinking, oh my God, I want to do my MBA here.
The location helps. It's right beside lake. So wherever you're standing, your view is that of a beautiful lake with the Chicago skyscrapers at a distance. So they've definitely placed it at the best location possible on campus. The walk through the Northwestern campus, which has its own set of very Gothic architecture, is also something very beautiful to look at and walk amongst.
Yeah, say no more, Shivani. We're all sold. Cool. And Shivani, speaking of something which is, I guess, less endearing about Chicago is the fact that Chicago is notorious for its brutally harsh winter, right? So if you had to convey to a Mumbaiker how cold it gets in Evanston, how would you do that?
Okay. So I was scared before coming to Chicago that I thought my winter would be basically spent huddled up under a blanket in my room just because how does one face minus 10 degrees Celsius, right? But have no fear at all. What I have learned after coming here is that it's not bad weather, you have bad clothes. So, Chicago has very cold winters, but this year, possibly due to global warming, it did not seem to be that cold. We did have some cold spells for a week, but the rest of it was very, very bearable. And this is not just my opinion, but everybody's opinion over here. So, it was a very pleasant winter, as everybody is calling it. But even during those cold spells, you just have to layer yourself up a lot better. I think the quality of jackets that are available here in the US and especially in Chicago are very much different and better as compared to the jackets that you'd get possibly in India, solely because of the intensity of winter. So once you have those, you're pretty much set to walk around anywhere that you want and be able to bear it for a couple of minutes, considering most of the places are very close to each other. I also think that the major difference between winters in India versus winters in the US are that most of the places in the US are centrally heated, which is why the only time that you feel cold is while walking to some place, so in the transit period, as opposed to in India where you would generally feel very cold during winter solely because it'll be cold for 24 hours. So here it's just a period of the walk that's bad. You could always Uber if you think that that's easier for you, but otherwise it is very much bearable. So once you're inside, you're pretty much in normal clothes because you wouldn't feel cold at all.
Yeah, love the line. There's no bad weather, only bad clothes. I had one student at Kellogg whom I had previously worked with. He talked about how the first thing he invested in was $1,000 jacket, goose feather jacket from Canada. And the sole reason being that he did not want this to be a fact in his decision making. The fact that it's cold. So the only thing he ever needed was just put that jacket on, sort it.
Exactly. I am doing quite well, and I would say quite the same with just like a $150 jacket. So go sales and go good scouting skills. You don't need to invest that much at all.
Fair, nicely done. Amazing. All right, Shivani, one key component of the Kellogg experience is also Quest, right? The Quest trip. Tell us a little bit about how Quest work and also your own Quest trip.
Absolutely. So, to give everyone a background, Quest is a trip that you go on in the very first week of your first year. So, you essentially land in Evanston, you have a couple of days of the welcoming, I was about to say conference with all of the, but basically the welcoming ceremony. And then you, with 25 of your batchmates and about 4 to 5 of the second years, set out on a trip to different places around the world. The best part of Quest is that you do not have to reveal your full name or any other information that identifies what your previous background was, whether it be in terms of your profession, your country of origin, although that's sort of easy to guess, or what you want to do in life afterwards. Nothing of that sort. What this results in is that you skip the small talk. You do not have to start off with the same rigmarole of, hey, I come from finance, and then I worked in a startup, and I want to go into tech. Nothing of that sort. You go immediately into deeper conversations about the particular place that you have visited, what your opinions about different things in life are. There is a very, very fun ceremony at the end of this, which is called the big reveal, which is when you actually finally just sit in a hot seat and tell people about yourself. And it's a very, very fun event wherein people would have built perceptions about you over the 10 days that you're traveling. And then you might turn out to be a completely different person with a very, very different background. That Quest group, solely because you've traveled with those people for 10 days, you have shared so many good moments and good conversation, does end up becoming a very, very strong knit community of your own that you have going into your first year. There are a lot of Quest meetups after that. You have a lot of small group dinners with your Quest group. You can team up with your Quest mates for the different events that happen over here, and typically results in a lot of strong friendships. So, like I mentioned, Kellogg is very good at creating those communities within the MBA cohort. Quest is just another part of affirming how much effort they put into this entire initiative.
Nice. And for 10 days, nobody gets to know the other
Yeah,
person's
absolutely
name.
not. Yeah. So they would know your first name, but they would not know anything else about you. And you can also fake your first name if that's what you want. Have a completely different personality. Say that you were working in space exploration before and you'd be just fine.
Nice. And Shivani, where did you go on your Quest trip, and what was your experience like during those 10 days?
So I decided to challenge myself and I went to Zion National Park and Bryce Canyon, which are two places in the US. Having said that, I chose a domestic trip, but there were about 30 different locations comprising of both domestic and international options. So I have friends who've gone to France and Turkey and Norway.
So you get to
different
choose the location.
You get to rank the locations and then you'll be matched and allocated. Yes, I got my top choice. You can go to Puerto Rico, you can go to Peru, Brazil, all sorts of places. For me, I think I loved my Quest group. The hiking definitely made us connected. I learned a lot more about myself while hiking, but overall, I think the destination does not matter as much as the journey.
All right. So speaking a little bit more about Quest, Shivani, if someone's trying to be frugal and considering skipping Quest, what would you say to them?
I think I would say that it's not just Quest, but any other MBA trip that you want, you should know what you want to get out of it. So if you don't want to go for Quest, there is always an option which was called Experience Chicago, which meant that there was a large group of people who may not have wanted to go for Quest or had particular situations wherein they were not able to travel at that point of time. And so that group went and explored different parts of Chicago. And for me, that seems to be a very cool activity to do at the beginning of the school year. I feel all of us have always explored different cities while traveling prior to MBA, and this would have been just another nice trip to go on with a bunch of your future classmates. And that was definitely like a lot extremely cheap as compared to the other options as well. Similarly, for other trips or for that matter, with regard to any other activity in an MBA, you ought to know how much you're willing to spend and stick to that without giving into that FOMO, because the MBA experience is what you make of it at the end of the day. And if you're happy with the frugal options, or if you're happy, I would say the more intense options, that you do you.
Yeah, I like that. You do you. Shivani, what's been the biggest challenge you've faced at Kellogg thus far?
So I think I would echo everybody when I say this, that it is the sheer number of activities and opportunities that you have to do stuff, and just the ability to be able to handle all of them is something that is a challenge at first, but also more of like a learning experience over the entire year. There are different ways with which you can spend your 24 hours, and the ability to understand what is important, what is to be prioritized, and being able to stick to that decision without feeling that FOMO is something that I believe every MBA student has to go through, and is definitely true at Kellogg. So for instance, any particular lunch hour would have events related to fitness, would have events related to the lunch and learns. The guest speakers that I talked about would have possibly team or client meetings with regard to whatever you're working. There would be different showcases of different clubs. There would be improv club sessions, or there would be sessions to teach you financial modeling. And just the ability to know what is it that would provide you the most value at any particular point of time is something that you hone over your MBA experience. And I do believe that it is good to also develop the ability of context switching. I think I've learned context switching here much more than I have in any other environment in my life. So the ability to be able to switch out of a class to a fun session, back to a group assignment, and give everything your best is also going to be useful for the rest of your life.
Okay. Super. And Shivani, what is one resource or opportunity you wished you knew about as an applicant to Kellogg?
I do think that if I had to redo this, I would have definitely reached out to the different clubs a lot more. So every club has a VP of admissions specifically allocated to talking to incoming students. I think that for my part, I stuck to reaching out to people on LinkedIn, I stuck to reaching out to friends of friends, and so on. But if I had just maybe gone on to the club's website and looked up the contacts of the VP of admissions of that particular club, I would have received much more targeted and concise information without having to sift through the information or having to do the groundwork of getting contacts and trying to basically reach out to each one at their own specified time. So a very easy way to do this would have been to directly reach out to people whose entire position of responsibility is to talk to the incoming or interested students.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And speaking about the different clubs, right? Can you talk about each of the activities you've been involved in the first year? There's like 5 of them. So maybe like a little bit about each of them.
Absolutely. So coming into my first year, I wanted to be a part of non-professional activities at first, solely because I knew that I would be partaking in the events of the professional club's activities, but not necessarily did I want to spend my entire time, working in a professional club at that. I wanted to have that balance. And so I chose to be a part of the Gender Equity Network because some of the causes that I worked for in the past were related to that. I chose to be a director of content because in all of my years in school and BITS Pilani, I had never really been a part of a role which required convincing people through a narrative or writing. And hence, I thought this would be a very cool opportunity to do that. And thus, I became the director of content at the Gender Equity Network, which is a really cool initiative here in Kellogg. It is akin to the Women's Business Association, but not relegated to the issues of women. We talk about and discuss activities related to all genders. We also organize events such as the Man Ambassadors Challenge, which essentially is a very popular event here at Kellogg, wherein we have men participating in challenges and activities that showcase the basically lives and challenges that other genders face. So this could be something as quirky as go around without using your pockets, or just basically carry a sanitary napkin with you in your bag for the entire month, which always showcases, or get 2 pairs of shoes to the hub, one formal and one pair of sneakers, because these are situations that women have to go through every day, and the mental overload is something that we wanted to convey through that. So very, very innovative and interactive club is the Gender Equity Network that I was very happy to be a part of. The other thing that I was part of is the Student Association, and there I was the director of Alumni Engagement. Coming from BITS Pilani, which has a very, very tight-knit network, I wanted to be a part of the Kellogg Alumni Network, basically functioning as well. And thus I got a chance to have panels, call alumni from different parts of the US for now, and have those discussions with them, facilitate that between alumni and current students. And this is something that I will be leading the charge on for next year as well. Apart from that, as a university or as a college, Kellogg does not require you to formally be a part of clubs to partake in those activities.
Nice, because I remember, when I was doing my MBA, we had to formally become members to partake in activities.
Yes, there are schools which I've heard required you to also pay a membership fee to be a part of particular clubs, but Kellogg does not require you to do that. You can be a part of as many clubs you want and avail as many events that you want. So I definitely was involved in many other professional clubs for my recruiting, but the clubs that I love are the Kellogg EVC Club, the Games Club for that matter, just because these give you perspectives through their own events into so many parts of, say, the entrepreneurship world that I did not know before. So for instance, I had no idea what a search fund is or how entrepreneurship through acquisition works before coming to Kellogg. And it was a big reveal for me to know how the financing and operator part of this particular process works. Another instance is, for example, private equity operations is another role that I had very little idea about, and just going to these sessions and speaking to alumni who've been a part of these roles was something that is super helpful for me.
Nice. And what about the games club? What kind of activities did you have?
So the games club is the happiest part of my clubs, in my opinion. In India, I always thought that I would be a very avid board game player, but I did not have probably the time or just close proximity to people to actually play a lot of board games. But here, I think in my very first year, I have possibly learned more than 10 different board games, with Secret Hitler being my favorite one. And that is just the best part of my day, to wind down and finish off with all of my assignments and go to the games club events just to be able to play that game. And in doing so, it's not just playing the game or learning about new things that is in the equation. It's also meeting a very diverse group of people who have all been a part of different things, but at the end of the day, come and just play a game with you. And that's a very, very cool friendship setting to have.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. I got to look that game. Amazing. And what about Kellogg Cares? Can you briefly touch upon that as well?
Kellogg Cares is part of Kellogg that involves students in volunteering for different nonprofits, schools across Chicago and Evanston. So it's been a cool experience for me to be able to go to different schools in Chicago, speak to kids across different levels of their schooling, and basically interact with more of Kellogg students across different programs as well. Also, I think it's different experiences that come out of this that really shape you as a person. For instance, in my last Kellogg Cares visit, I had to read out a storybook to about 50 kids. And as much as I love being on stage and talking to different people, I realized that answering questions of about 50 kids while reading out a storybook in a high-pitched tone is an experience that I have never faced at all. So it need not be about just community service. It's also providing you those experiences that you might not have faced in any other setting that we are in on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's super. And how can interested candidates learn more about these clubs and opportunities? Like, for example, there's the website. So that's one way. How else?
I do think that all of the clubs have very interactive Instagram pages. So if you're on Instagram and would want to interact with the activities that the clubs do on a day-to-day basis, quite literally, then that would be a good resource. Speaking to people of that club, of course, is another resource. Like I said, VP of admissions is positioned in every single club. Directors of admissions is, again, first year student in every single club. And so getting to know from them what their experiences have been, rather than just reading about the activities from the website, would be a useful way to go about this.
That's helpful. Thanks, Shivani. And Shivani, you are also scheduled to be co-president next year, right? So of the General Management Club. Can you talk about that as well as the first ever India Business Conference? That sounds really exciting. I want to learn more about that as well.
Absolutely. So for my summer, I will be doing an internship at Baird. It's a financial services firm, and I will be doing a leadership development program, which is basically a general management track in the different divisions of the firm. So I have a chance to intern in either the PEVC division or the investment banking division or the wealth management division. And that is essentially why I think I chose to lead the General Management Club. The General Management Club essentially provides you with the resources to understand the nuances of a general management track, to talk to its alums, and to understand whether that is the right career for you. The optionality, again, that it provides is something that draws a lot of people towards this track. So yes, I think excited about the learnings that I will be having over the summer and bring them forth to this particular club and first year students who will be coming in after that. We also want to have a cool guest speakers who will be able to showcase how this particular path gets you to maybe like a director level position much earlier than most of the traditional paths. What are the pros and cons of doing this, and why I believe that most of the MBA students are very well equipped to be a part of this particular path. So that's it about the General Management Club. Coming to Kellogg, what we realized is we have a huge Indian community, people from different different backgrounds and those that have done very, very well in their pre-Kellogg careers as well. And thus we have a huge network of potential people we essentially all could be reaching out to, and we would want to showcase that and like increase the reach of the Indian business community per se here at Kellogg. That is what we envision to do in the next year. Especially we'll be having our conference in the spring quarter. So this conference is essentially going to be having Indians from different sectors, different parts of, those that are working in the US or those that have gone back to India. And we will be having these particular sessions for people, not just Indians, but like the entire Kellogg community to understand what are the nuances of the Indian ecosystem, how the state of business has improved over the last few years, and why India is a very, very vibrant economy to be working and investing in.
Very cool. That sounds fantastic. Can't wait to see the lineup that you guys will have planned for later. Shivani, do students from the different MBA programs at Kellogg engage with each other? Like, for example, 1Y, 2Y, Triple M, MBAI?
Yes. So this is a very common, I would say, question that a lot of incoming students seem to be having. Yes, very much so. I think the only difference is the duration of the program and the particular extra classes, as I like to call them, that people of the, say, MBA program would be having. But pretty much all of the classes that you take will be together. So if, say, I'm taking a class called Financial Decisions, then that class will comprise of everybody, 1Ys, MBAIs, Triple M's who are interested in financial decisions and will be studying that along with me. All of the activities that are done are very much put on the general Slack channel. And so I don't think I even would notice whether that particular person is from a different program as compared to me. So it's a very, very integrated community, and all of the different programs are essentially studying courses alongside you.
Okay, cool. And speaking of courses, right? Can you share the academic highlights for you during your MBA thus far?
Absolutely. So coming into my MBA, I wrestled with the notion of whether I should be doing hard skill courses or whether I should be doing soft skill courses. I don't think I have a clear answer to each of this yet, but I have dabbled in both sides to know what is the USP of doing different courses. I think my favorite course thus far has been Financial Decisions, as I referred to it earlier. It has given me the technical skills to be able to work in a financial firm and basically to understand the nuances of that world better. But having said that, there are other soft skill courses that essentially open a new world of operating or like working to you. So that those could be leadership in organizations, managerial leadership, power in organizations, selling yourself and your ideas, entrepreneurial selling, which really teach you how do you think about a particular scenario and present the best version of either yourself or your product to the world. A favorite class of mine thus far in that regard has been managerial leadership, which is taught by Professor Harry Kramer, who is ex-CEO of Baxter International, a global pharmaceutical company. What he does is in all of the 10 sessions of that particular class, he calls CEOs from different sectors. Most of these are alums, but that's not particularly a necessity. And they talk about how they envision their career. So it might not be a particular decision related to a particular task that they had, but just how they thought about balancing their life and their career. What are the skills that they learned to be able to do well in their career? What are the values that they think are the most important to function well as an individual? And ultimately, what have been their learnings over the course of their career? And it's very interesting to learn about how their experiences shape them over different parts of their life. They also talk about personal circumstances. So you get to know them about as individuals rather than an inaccessible, very smart person at the helm of the organization. It just brings you the whole individual and possibly reduces a little bit of imposter syndrome as well, as I like to think about it.
Nice. And Shivani, who are the star professors and what are the most popular electives?
I would say most of the entrepreneurship courses are the ones that are most popular at Kellogg. So I'll start off with the courses first. It's leading and launching startups. It is, like I said, selling yourself and your ideas. It is personal leadership insights that are bid at a very high price. By that, I mean that you bid a particular, you quote a particular price in order to get a course. That's a whole other conversation that I think you would learn about as you get into your MBA. But yeah, these are the most popular courses. This is possibly because of the entrepreneurship world being very large and dynamic and very interesting to most people right now, with a lot of people being interested in the operating and investing sides of it. Our star professors include Professor Carter Cast, who is the ex-CEO of Walmart.com, Professor Harry Kramer, as I mentioned. We have Professor Victoria Medbeck, who is considered to be the best negotiator in the world, and she's amazing. So she teaches this class called Negotiations, and every student wants to definitely take that class in their 2 years or the duration of their program. We have other really, really good professors in marketing. Kellogg is known for its marketing department, and we have Professor Garthwaite in healthcare. We have so many others who basically are amazing at their field. While these star professors are known because of their prior experience and, of course, the way they teach, I would say that all of the professors in Kellogg know how to orchestrate a class very well, and thus they bring out those points of view from each and everyone that enables people to learn about their subject. So, for example, the class that I'm doing right now is called Strategic Challenges in Emerging Markets. Our professor is Professor Benjamin Jones, who was part of the Obama administration and thus has a view of how different countries operate like nobody else in Kellogg, and yet he can have a discussion in class that engages students to bring about those insights themselves. That is, how would you negotiate with a country that has particular sanctions, or what is the way to deal with the World Bank? And all of these are things that are very interesting to sort of come up with yourself as well.
Very nice. Shivani, we also want to talk about recruiting. So I'm going to switch gears quickly now. Can you share about your recruiting journey at Kellogg? What were the timelines? What resources did you avail? How did you prepare? What were the opportunities that you secured? And how did you go about the decision making to choose Baird? I know that's a lot of questions, but just wanted to lay it all out there.
So I think in any business school, your recruiting happens in your fall quarter, which is the first quarter that you have. So definitely prepare yourself to take charge of your entire recruiting journey immediately as you get on to business school. You do get a month to settle down, understand the different opportunities that are available, but after that, it picks up on a very, very quick scale. So as far as Kellogg goes, they have something called IPGs, which are called interview prep groups. It is a group of about 5 first years recruiting for a particular sector, working together.
What are the various IPGs?
So IPGs are across different sectors: consulting, tech, there is now entrepreneurship and venture capital IPG, there is a finance, investment banking IPG. We have different niche IPGs as well, as organized by the different clubs. So there will always be a group of interested people recruiting towards a particular sector. This is formalized, so it's a platform that is worked on by the administration as well as the different clubs together, but you can always form an IPG of any other sector that you possibly...
And can you be part of multiple IPGs?
You can. You do have to choose one at the beginning of the year, just because that gives you the focus to, be involved in that particular sector. And yeah, however, I do know that there were people who changed maybe their recruitment in one particular sector, did not go well, or they did not feel that the opportunities available there were actually in line with what they thought of. So they switched to a startup IPG, because actually startup recruiting happens a little later in the year. So you have the option to switch for sure. Yeah, so this is a group of first years, which is led by a pair of second years who have recruited in that particular sector successfully in the last year. So they know the ins and outs of the recruiting process and can help you with tactical advice and suggestions as to how you should go about the entire process. As far as the recruiting scenario at Kellogg goes, Kellogg has instituted what is called a sort of like a no communications period until the 9th of October every year. What that means is companies cannot reach out to students or engage with them before that period. It gives people a month to form their own opinions on the different industries, sectors, and opportunities available, and then start to have their own game plan ready as to which sector they want to target. You're also not ready, I believe, to start having a recruitment conversation immediately after you come to business school and before you learn all of the nuances. So that's a really good buffer period to have in order to prepare yourself for the right questions to ask or the right things to actually get to know about. Once that buffer period is done, companies descend onto campus and start speaking to students every single day.
Quite like a mosquito which has been buzzing around.
Very similar. So your attention will be hounded by the different firms that there are and the offerings that they have for both the internship and then later on for the full-time career, which is great because as a Kellogg MBA student, you're so much in demand that so many companies want you. So it's quite reassuring to see so many recruiters right there on campus, but it can be a little daunting at first to manage those conversations with so many different firms. Coffee chats is a word that will become a part of your day-to-day vocabulary as this period goes by, because you will be expected to speak to the different firms about what your aspirations are and ask them specific questions about their day and whatever it is that you want to know to have an informed opinion before submitting your resume. I would say that it is important to put on a good impression even in these coffee chats, because ultimately you are talking to your recruiters. So your game face has to be on immediately in like the first quarter of your MBA journey. Here as well, Kellogg will have a number of workshops for consulting tech. They will have boot camps, which basically show you the different resources available within the Career Management Center, the different resources that current students have used, any suggestions that they have. So there are enough and more opportunities to know what are the resources available. This can be put into practice with the help of career peers who are again second-year students who are actually being paid and like they have a job and responsibility to help you with your resume, to help you with your interviews, to help you with whatever you want essentially in whatever part of the recruiting journey that you are in, and basically help you present your best self for the sector that you are recruiting in. The Career Management Center has individual sessions with almost everyone, and then you can keep on booking more as you have more questions or as you want more help in any specific domain. So I think in conclusion, I would just want to say that, yeah, coming into an MBA school, that is more than enough help that is given out to each and every individual person. You just need to know yourself the best in order to choose the careers that you want to possibly intern in and then thereafter work in full time.
Very helpful. And what IPG were you a part of, Shivani?
So I was targeting more strategy careers, and I thought the consulting IPG would be something that gives me an access both the case interview part of it, the behavioral part of it, and thus help me to target not just consulting, but also, like I said, the general management leadership development positions that I was interested in, the corporate strategy positions that are available in different companies, and basically any other operator positions that actually have come up now that people are recruiting. So it was a very, very good experience. I like the fact that an IPG is not just training you for the interview, they're also training you to have a good resume. They are training you to have a good cover letter if needed. They literally, our second years provided us insights into the different coffee chats that are there. So it's for any part of the recruitment process that you're in, you always have support.
Wow, that sounds incredible.
Yeah, while Kellogg is known, and I mean, I can see that in action, that everybody is very happy to help. What this IPG does is that you don't have to spend your time in reaching out to the second years, asking for their time and, asking them that, oh, can I get 30 minutes over here and an hour over there? There are second years who are positioned to helping you and just you specifically. So they themselves actually allocate their time without you even asking for it. And that's great.
Yeah, that's very unusual. I haven't really seen that at other schools.
I can see it really helping introverted people who might not possibly go out and ask for that help as often as extroverts do. And I think it's a good inclusive factor there as well.
Yeah, super. And you had multiple offers, right, Shivani? Could you touch upon that? And also what led you to choose the offer with Baird?
I think when I was talking to you about my internships, I was telling you about the different internships that I did in my first year I got Baird as one of my, in like the first week of recruiting, loved it as an option. And thus that became my option for the summer. The other offers that I was telling you about were offers that actually I did do internship in my spring quarter, which were for different growth strategy practicum courses, which I'd love to tell you about as well. What I loved about Baird is I was a part of before, but in the area that I would want to continue in post my MBA.
Okay.
And with regard to the other internship offers, I interned with Ecotech, which is a startup in the energy space. This was part of the growth strategy practicum curriculum at Kellogg, where you work with different companies as an operator on their growth strategy. So this was a team that I worked with, and we had to understand the renewable energy space from scratch, understand what are the opportunities that are available in this space, and thus devise a growth to market strategy for the firm. This again comes to the second experience that I was telling you about, which is the internship I'll be doing in the fall of next year, which is with F7 Ventures. It is a very cool VC fund which has senior employees from Meta who are investing in the consumer and technology space. What I loved about them is they have been operators in the past, so it is that operator mindset being utilized in the investing space, and that's an idea that I confirm to a lot. I do think that you need to have the execution and operator skills yourself before actually making decisions for investing, and that is affirms that value.
Very cool. That should be so fun. And Shivani, I also want to talk a little bit about the broader landscape for Indian students in your class. So, if you could talk a little bit about how many Indians are there from India in your class and where are people headed? Like, for example, around roughly so many people in tech, so many in consulting, so many in general management, startups, PVC, just like a very rough sense to the extent that you know.
I would say that the Indian cohort in Kellogg has been increasing a lot. I would say that there are upwards of 50 to 60 people in the Indian cohort currently across different programs. As far as their plans for the summer go, I would say that about 20% are going into consulting, 30 to 40% would be going into tech, which is definitely something that a lot of people know Kellogg for and are very excited about. A small portion of us are going into general management and VC and PE as well. But what I like about the fact is everybody got into the career choice that they wanted. So if they wanted to recruit for a particular thing, the resources that they got from Kellogg were very helpful in helping them to actually get the internship in the area that they wanted. So everybody is happy.
Very cool. And Shivani, ultimately, is there anything else about Kellogg that you would like to share?
I do think that it is a whirlwind of experiences, but as I like to tell everybody, an MBA is what you make of it. So be very intentional. If having a startup is what you want, do not get distracted by anything else. And while it sounds easy, before coming into an MBA, there are, of course, so many different activities and that are going on that it's easy to lose focus. Again, an MBA does not cater to just a particular type of person. You could have the best social life if that's what you want. If you want to have chill life for 2 years, then of course, making those connections, going to parties is something that MBA schools are known for, and that's what you can do. But if you are not that sort of person and you want to be here to know what different avenues are, to speak to individuals in that particular domain that you might not have had access to before, then that is, very easily possible. So have very, very strong mindset before coming to an MBA is the advice that I would give. The rest is going to be a good ride if you stick to that particular part of your personality.
Amazing. Shivani, thank you so much for your time. Really, really enjoyed the conversation and you really shared some rich insights. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, and all the very best to everyone who will be applying to all of the MBA schools henceforth.
Amazing.